Disclaimer: it's inspired by reality, shaped by imagination.
What happens when one of Britain's most iconic performers walks onto a morning talk show expecting light conversation and instead ends up in a confrontation that sends the entire studio into a stunned silence? Rowan Atkinson, the man the world knows for his sharp wit and legendary characters, sat down on Lorraine for what was supposed to be a calm, friendly chat. But the moment the topic shifted to Elon Musk, government oversight, and the future of tech empires, the tone changed fast. Lorraine pushed harder. Rowan pushed back. The tension climbed. The smiles faded. And what followed was one of the most unexpected walk-offs daytime TV has ever seen. This is the story of how a routine interview turned into a heated clash over whether Elon Musk's companies, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and beyond, should face stricter government regulation, and how Rowan Atkinson, normally composed and controlled, reached a breaking point no one in the studio could have predicted. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe for more dramatic celebrity showdowns, tense studio moments, and unforgettable on-air confrontations.
The studio lights glowed warm and inviting, the kind of soft morning shine that made everything feel safe and easy. The audience murmured with anticipation as the doors opened and Rowan Atkinson stepped out, offering that familiar half-smile that made people instantly relax. Even Lorraine Kelly rose from her chair with a delighted clap. "Rowan, love, it's so good to have you here." He walked over, shook her hand, and gave a polite nod to the audience. They clapped loudly, thrilled to see the man behind some of Britain's most beloved characters. Rowan settled into the sofa, crossing one leg over the other, his expression open but measured. Lorraine began lightly, as she always did. "Rowan, love, it's so good to have you here." He walked over, shook her hand, and gave a polite nod to the audience. They clapped loudly, thrilled to see the man behind some of Britain's most beloved characters. Rowan settled into the sofa, crossing one leg over the other, his expression open but measured. Lorraine began lightly, as she always did. "Rowan, love, it's so good to have you here." He walked over, shook her hand, and gave a polite nod to the audience. They clapped loudly, thrilled to see the man behind some of Britain's most beloved characters. Rowan settled into the sofa, crossing one leg over the other, his expression open but measured. Lorraine began lightly, as she always did. "Rowan, you look wonderful. What have you been up to lately? Still keeping busy?" Rowan chuckled in that soft, understated way of his. "I try to. I've been doing more writing these days and tinkering with cars, as always." The crowd laughed, and Lorraine leaned in. "Still getting your hands greasy, I see." "Well, someone has to," Rowan replied dryly, earning more laughter. The interview started smooth, breezy. Lorraine asked about his latest project, a film he was producing. Rowan spoke calmly, hands moving only slightly as he described the story. He joked about age, technology, and learning to operate new film equipment. The banter was soft, almost nostalgic. But Lorraine, as always, had a card hidden beneath the sofa cushions, one she kept for the moment the interview warmed enough to take a sharper turn. "So," she said casually, flipping through her notes, "speaking of technology, I want to ask you about something that's been getting a lot of attention. Elon Musk." Rowan's expression didn't change, but his posture did. Subtle, shoulders tightening, chin lifting ever so slightly. A few in the audience noticed. Lorraine went on, voice airy. "You've been quite vocal in the past about concerns over big tech. So I'm curious, do you think companies like Tesla, SpaceX, even Neuralink should be regulated more heavily by the government?" The audience murmured, sensing the shift. Rowan straightened more visibly now. "Well," he began carefully, "I think it's fair to say that when a single individual has influence over transportation, communication, satellite networks, and even neurotechnology, someone should be asking questions." Lorraine smiled, but her eyes sharpened. "But regulated? He's an innovator. Some people say regulation would only slow progress." Rowan didn't smile back. "Progress without oversight isn't progress, it's gambling. A small gasp rolled through the studio. Lorraine pressed. "So you're saying Elon Musk is dangerous?" Rowan frowned. "I didn't say that. No, but you implied it." Rowan leaned back slightly, his hands clasped in front of him. "Lorraine, with respect, I'm implying that no one, no matter how brilliant, should operate without accountability. Musk has cars driving themselves on public roads, rockets launching over neighborhoods, satellites cluttering our skies, and now he's putting chips into people's skulls. That's not fiction anymore. That's reality." Lorraine's brows raised. "You sound worried." "I'm realistic," he corrected. "We regulate doctors, pilots, even farmers. Why should billionaires with experimental technology get a free pass?" The audience murmured louder this time, sensing real tension brewing. Lorraine tilted her head, a hint of challenge in her voice. "So you might say you're being dramatic." Rowan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Some might say you're being dismissive." That earned a collective "ooh" from the front row. Lorraine stiffened. "I'm just asking questions." "And I'm answering them," Rowan replied calmly, though the edge in his voice wasn't subtle. From the corner, a producer shifted uncomfortably, sensing where this was headed. Lorraine leaned forward now, almost too close. "Rowan, a public loves innovation. They love what Musk creates. Don't you think government interference would just get in the way?" Rowan met his gaze steadily. "Government interference keeps planes from falling, hospitals from collapsing, and bridges from breaking. Regulation isn't the enemy, recklessness is." The temperature in the studio rose. A few audience members clapped, others looked unsure, glancing between the two. Lorraine smiled tightly. "Well, looks like we've touched a nerve." Rowan exhaled slowly. "I think we've touched a truth." And with that, the sparks that had quietly built beneath the cozy, brightly lit set finally began catching flame.
The shift happens slowly at first. Lorraine leans forward with that polite smile she uses right before she goes in harder. Rowan notices it. The audience notices it. Even the cameraman adjusts his frame, sensing the temperature rising. "Rowan, you talk about innovation as if these companies are harmless, but do you really think a private billionaire should decide how rockets fly, how cars drive themselves, and how information flows online?" Rowan folds his hands, still calm, but more alert now. "Technically, governments already influence all of that. They just move very slowly. The tech world moves fast. If you slow it down too much, you don't prevent problems, you fall behind." Lorraine shakes her head. "That's the usual excuse. Progress, speed, innovation. But what happens when everyday people become test subjects? Self-driving car glitches, AI misinformation, satellite networks interfering with aviation. Shouldn't there be limits?" Rowan tilts his head. "Limits, yes, but not a chokehold. Regulation shouldn't be punishment because someone builds something bold." Joy Behar would have jumped in at this point if she were in the room, but with Lorraine alone, it becomes more pointed, more personal. "Rowan, you're sounding like a spokesperson." She softens it with an uncertain grin. "Are you secretly on Elon's payroll?" There's a mix of laughter from the audience. Some find it funny, some don't. Rowan doesn't laugh at all. "No, I'm capable of having an opinion without being bought," he replies. His tone sharpens. "And I think it's unfair to paint me as naive because I don't want everything throttled by bureaucracy." Lorraine senses the shift and presses harder. "Then let me ask you directly, would you trust Elon Musk's companies to police themselves, to put safety before profit?" Rowan sighs. "I wouldn't trust any company to do that, but that's not the question. The question is whether the government should regulate in a way that suffocates innovation or supports it." "But that's vague," Lorraine shoots back. "What does support even mean here? Because right now, it looks like these companies act first and apologize later. Doesn't that scare you?" Rowan's patience starts thinning. His brows draw together. "You're assuming the worst intentions. You're assuming everyone building these things is reckless. I don't believe that." Lorraine doesn't let up. Belief doesn't change the consequences. Musk launches satellites that interfere with astronomy, he posts things online that tank stocks, he rushes features that malfunction. You're taking his genius as reassurance. His genius built things no one else attempted. And again, this isn't about him alone. It's about the broader question of control. If you give too much power to governments, innovation flatlines. Lorraine lifts her notes. Or maybe you keep ordinary people safe. Rowan leans back in his chair, frustration finally cracking through his composed exterior. Safety isn't guaranteed by regulation. If it were, history wouldn't be full of disasters under fully regulated systems. The audience reacts to that. A few nod, a few murmur, unsure where this is heading. Lorraine tries to regain grip. Rowan, I respect you, but tech companies have crossed lines. Facial recognition used without consent, social platforms collecting data, AI deepfakes fooling millions, and now Musk runs companies touching space, energy, cars, communication. How is that not a reason for strict oversight? Strict oversight becomes control. Control becomes stagnation, Rowan replies. His voice is firmer. We should be careful, not paranoid alarmists. The tone shifts again. And now the air feels charged. Lorraine's smile vanishes. So you're saying people worried about safety are paranoid? That's not what I said, but that's how it sounds. Rowan exhales sharply. No, that's how you want it to sound. Another ripple moves through the studio. Lorraine straightens in her chair, her tone icy. I'm doing my job, Rowan, asking the questions that matter. And I'm answering them, but you're twisting them into something else. Cameras zoom in. Viewers at home feel the tension. Producers in the control room tighten headsets. This isn't the gentle daytime exchange they booked. It's evolving into something sharper, something heated, something personal. And neither one of them is backing down.
The audience had gone quiet again, leaning forward as if bracing for what was coming. Rowan Atkinson's hands were folded tightly on his lap, his usual dry humor replaced by a seriousness that made the studio air feel almost heavy. Lorraine, too, had shifted, sensing that this wasn't just another tech debate. It had become something more personal. Rowan finally spoke, his voice lower, deliberate. Lorraine, you ask if these companies should be regulated, but what you may not understand is what happens when regulation fails or when innovation proceeds without foresight. He paused, eyes scanning the audience, and then he added softly, I've watched what can happen when people put trust in technology without question. I've seen friends and colleagues suffer, careers impacted, mental health strained, lives disrupted. It's not just numbers or statistics, it's real human consequences. Lorraine's eyebrows rose, a flicker of concern passing over her face. Are you talking about Musk's companies specifically? Yes, he said, tone steady, but tinged with pain. Because the scale is different. This isn't a small app or a local startup. We're talking about electric vehicles on public roads, rockets flying above cities, satellites that can affect communication, AI systems that make decisions about people's lives. People are putting their trust in these systems, and in the process, mistakes have consequences that can't always be reversed. A hush spread through the studio. The audience could feel the gravity of his words. Even Lorraine's posture softened, the defensive edge giving way to curiosity mixed with unease. Rowan continued, voice cracking slightly now. I've watched what can happen when people put trust in technology without question. I've seen friends and colleagues suffer, careers impacted, mental health strained, lives disrupted. It's not just numbers or statistics, it's real human consequences. Lorraine's voice softened, almost whispering. I see. I hadn't thought about it like that. Rowan's gaze returned to her. You see the headlines, the stock prices, the tweets, but do you see the people impacted behind the numbers? Families, employees, engineers, even ordinary citizens whose lives intersect with these technologies in ways no one talks about. He leaned forward, hands gripping the edge of the sofa. "I'm not saying innovation is bad. I'm saying we must treat it responsibly. Not just because it's exciting, not just because it's profitable, but because people's lives depend on it. And when oversight is too little or too late, the consequences are real and often irreversible." The studio was quiet except for soft breathing from the front row. Lorraine had leaned back slightly, absorbing the weight of his words. She spoke carefully, her tone gentler than before. "I understand, Rowan. I really do. And I can see why this matters so deeply to you." Rowan exhaled slowly, the edge in his shoulders softening. "It matters because these are the moments when we have a choice, to act wisely, to anticipate risk, or to pretend nothing can go wrong. And pretending is how we end up in crises we could have prevented." The audience's reaction was quiet but intense. Some wiped tears, some murmured quietly, and several were visibly holding their breath. What had started as a discussion about regulation had evolved into a moment of truth, a personal revelation about accountability, responsibility, and the very real impact technology has on everyday lives. Rowan sat back finally, taking a breath. The tension in the room had shifted from confrontation to reflection. Even Lorraine, typically quick to challenge, seemed to pause, reassessing the weight of the conversation. And in that charged silence, it was clear the debate was no longer just about Musk or regulation. It was about responsibility, integrity, and the very real impact technology has on everyday lives.
The studio air had grown thick, almost electric. The audience leaned forward as if drawn in by invisible threads. Rowan Atkinson's calm exterior was starting to crack, just slightly at first. A tight jaw, a small tremor in his hand. But the tension was unmistakable. Lorraine Kelly's smile had disappeared entirely, replaced by the sharp edge of someone determined to push the conversation further. "You keep talking about responsibility, Rowan," Lorraine said, voice measured but insistent. "But isn't this all a bit extreme? Elon Musk has built incredible companies. Millions rely on him for jobs, innovation, even inspiration. Don't you think strict regulation could stifle that?" Rowan's eyes narrowed. His voice was low but firm. "I'm not arguing against innovation. I'm arguing against recklessness masquerading as progress. When someone has the ability to affect millions of lives with cars, rockets, and AI-driven technology, there needs to be accountability." The audience stirred at that. A few murmurs, a few gasps. The room seemed to pulse with the rising tension. Lorraine leaned closer, gesturing with her hands. "But you're sounding like you want to control everything. Are you saying the government should dictate every move a company makes?" Rowan's voice sharpened. "I'm saying they should be held to standards that protect people. It's not control, it's oversight. Safety isn't a suggestion. Standards are fine, but you can't just assume the worst every time an entrepreneur takes a risk. You're turning it into fear-mongering." Rowan straightened, his composure straining. "Fear? I call it awareness. Look around. Autonomous vehicles causing accidents, AI systems making mistakes in hospitals, rocket launches threatening neighborhoods. This isn't paranoia, this is happening." Lorraine's voice rose. "And banning or regulating everything won't fix human error. People make mistakes regardless of rules." Rowan's hand shot up, fingers spread, a rare outward display of frustration. "I'm not talking about banning everything. I'm talking about responsibility, about taking precautions before millions of people pay the price for unchecked experiments." A collective gasp swept through the studio. The audience could sense that this wasn't just a disagreement anymore. It was personal. Rowan's normally controlled, understated demeanor had vanished, replaced by something raw, urgent. Lorraine's expression hardened. "You sound like you want to punish genius because you can't trust it to be safe." Rowan's eyes flashed. "I'm not punishing genius. I'm defending reality. Do you understand what happens when innovation runs unchecked, Lorraine?" Lives are affected. People get hurt. Systems fail. And yet we cheer when a billionaire tweets instead of taking responsibility. The audience reacted audibly this time. Some clapped softly, some murmured in shock, a few visibly holding their breath. Lorraine's voice trembled with frustration. "I'm asking questions that matter, Rowan. You think you're the only one who cares about safety, but you're turning this into a personal crusade." Rowan leaned forward, voice low but intense. "It's personal because I care. You don't get to dismiss the consequences of these decisions lightly." He reached for his mic with deliberate movements. The tension was palpable. The crew froze, realizing what he might do. Lorraine's eyes widened. "Rowan, what are you—" Before she could finish, he pulled the microphone off and stood up abruptly. The chair scraped against the floor, echoing through the silent studio. Cameras swung to capture him as he looked down at Lorraine one last time. "I'm done here," he said quietly, but the edge in his voice made it land like a shout. Without another word, he walked off the set. The audience erupted. Scattered applause filled the room. Some people were stunned, some were cheering. The studio staff scrambled, trying to figure out how to handle the sudden end to a segment that had spiraled far beyond the expected. Lorraine remained seated, frozen for a few moments, her hands gripping the edge of the table. The smile that had opened the show was gone, replaced by a mixture of disbelief and realization. The camera lingered on the empty space where Rowan had been, capturing the tension, the chaos, and the unmistakable sense that something unforgettable had just happened. What had started as a discussion about Elon Musk and government regulation had escalated into a raw, emotional confrontation, and the walk-off was a moment that would be replayed endlessly, dissected online, and remembered as one of the most dramatic scenes in daytime television history.
The studio settled into an uneasy silence after Rowan Atkinson's sudden exit. The audience, still buzzing with disbelief, whispered among themselves, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Cameras hovered over the empty space he had left, capturing the lingering tension, the quiet shock, and the echoes of a confrontation that had erupted faster than anyone expected. Lorraine Kelly sat motionless for several seconds, her hands resting on the desk, her expression a mix of frustration, regret, and reflection. The warmth and laughter that had opened the show had completely vanished, replaced by a heavy, almost palpable intensity. For the first time that morning, Lorraine spoke softly. "Well, that was unexpected," she admitted, voice shaking slightly. "I didn't mean to push him that far. Rowan's clearly very passionate about this, and I respect that." The audience murmured their agreement, a mixture of empathy and lingering shock. Some clapped hesitantly, acknowledging the seriousness of the discussion rather than the theatrics of the walk-off. Lorraine's voice grew steadier as she continued. "This isn't just about Elon Musk or government oversight. It's about responsibility, accountability, and the real consequences of technology on our lives. I think we all need to remember that." Behind the scenes, social media had already exploded. Clips of Rowan standing, pulling off his microphone and walking out circulated rapidly, with hashtags like Rowan storms out, Lorraine confrontation, and tech debate gone wrong trending within minutes. Viewers debated fiercely. Some praised Rowan for standing his ground. Others criticized Lorraine for pressing too hard. Every angle of the story was being dissected online, from the subtle tension in the first segment to the explosive finale. Lorraine took a deep breath and addressed the camera directly, her tone now both solemn and conciliatory. "Rowan, if you're watching this, I hope you know that I didn't mean to trivialize your concerns. Your passion for accountability, for the well-being of people affected by these decisions is clear. I hope one day we can have this conversation again without the heat and with mutual understanding." The audience responded with a quiet, respectful applause, a reflection of the complicated emotions in the room: shock, admiration, and reflection, all mixed together. Some people whispered about what they had learned, while others remained silent, processing the rare glimpse into a celebrity unafraid to express deeply held convictions. As the show wrapped, Lorraine smiled faintly, the tension easing just slightly. Daytime television is supposed to be fun, yes, but sometimes the most important conversations are the ones that make us uncomfortable. Rowan reminded us all that responsibility, foresight, and accountability aren't just abstract ideas, they affect real people's lives.
The camera slowly panned across the audience, capturing faces that were thoughtful, some smiling softly, some shaking their heads. The energy had shifted from confrontation to reflection. Outside, social media buzzed with replayed clips and passionate commentary. And just like that, a routine morning interview had transformed into a memorable, emotional moment in daytime TV history, one that would be remembered, replayed, and debated for days to come. If you enjoyed this dramatic showdown, subscribe for more unforgettable celebrity confrontations, behind-the-scenes tension, and moments that leave daytime television viewers speechless.